Joining me now, Big by Matt Stoller. Matt is a Democratic analyst and guru, really knows the Democratic Party inside and out. He's also a monopoly slayer, writes a lot about it. He's got a newsletter, which I love. It's called Big. First of all, the name, every time I see it, it pops up on my phone when he does an article. It says Big by Matt Stoller. Right away there, you know you got something good. And his recent article, How Important Are Economies of Scale in Production and Innovation. Great newsletter, but he really goes into the Democratic Party apparatus. And he's a great writer and talented guy. And he's with us now to break down last night's very entertaining debate. Matt, let me just tell you this before we talk about your analysis. I've already given mine earlier in the show, but this is true. At one point in the debate, there was a commercial. Maybe it was the first break, and I actually went to the kitchen and made popcorn. It was like I just got to have a bowl of popcorn as I come back out of this break. So, Matt, I've given my analysis. I'm not going to taint you and tell you what it is. Give us your analysis of last night's big debate. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it was really, I mean, they all talked over each other the whole time. So it was basically like, it was, I don't know how many candidates, 6 or 7. It was just six or seven people, 6, talking at the same time for 2 hours, right? And it was just annoying. That was my experience. I don't know. I mean, and then the moderators were out of control. Like, they didn't, like, at one point, one of the moderators started, like, kind of flirting with Biden, which was weird. And then, like, this is not political analysis. I just thought that was weird. And also the audience, and I didn't know this, but this is actually something Trump said in 2016. The audience is apparently people who buy tickets for between $1,700 and $3,000 a piece.
Right.
So it was just like basically, and they were all supporting the South Carolina Democratic Party. So it was all just basically wealthy donors and lobbyists. So it was and they were like really raucous. So it was really weird because they were like cheering the things that you would just not expect from in a Democratic debate because they're horrible people. Well, I mean, whatever. I'm a Democrat. I'm sure your listeners think Democrats are horrible people, but like lobbyists are worse. They're awful. I think Democrats are fine, but like anyway. So it was just a very weird debate. It was badly structured. It was badly run. It wasn't like clear to me like what kind of outcomes are going to be from it. But so that's kind of my analysis.
All right, so
hey, you call yourself the Godzilla of truth.
Yes,
so I like that. So I'm gonna what does the Godzilla of truth think?
Well, look, I found the debate entertaining. Like, I know that a lot of people were upset because of the screaming, but I found it to be entertaining. I like when they were yelling at each other. I thought that was fun. So I guess I could take a contrarian view. Like I said, I actually went out and popped popcorn in my apartment in D.C. last night and had a good old time watching them all. I love what you said about that. I forgot about that creepy flirt thing going on with Joe Biden. That was so creepy. It was like, oh, yeah. Well, I forget what she said was like, oh, yes, we're going to be nice to you. And he's
You're
like, thank you. And it was like, you want to have a drink after the debate? I mean, it was so creepy. I forgot. I was like, I didn't even know where that came from. In fact, it made me feel uncomfortable. So that was one thing. The other thing we were making fun of earlier is Bloomberg has no future as a stand-up comic. Have you ever seen a person in your life deliver 3 consecutive jokes that were a complete disaster? They went nowhere. I mean, it was so you can't even make that up. If somebody tried to do that, they couldn't do it. I mean, the guy is humorless. There was no question about it. Look, I thought that the pundits are saying Biden won. I thought he was a catastrophe last night. I guess you win by getting up and pointing your finger and screaming. I mean, the guy makes no sense, Matthew. If you guys nominate this guy, Trump is going to annihilate him. I mean, he garbles his words. He's talking about there was 150 million people killed by guns. There's only 330 million people in America. Then Amy Klobuchar is like...
Wait a second. I mean, we do know that 1 out of every 2 Americans was killed by guns last year.
And then he said he invented some bill, and Amy's like, you don't even know what that bill is. I thought Biden was going to say, or somebody was going to say to him last night, Joe, in 5 minutes, you're going to also tell us you invented the internet. I mean, all he did was talk about stuff he didn't do. And then he talks about standing up to China. Matt, the guy went to China. The only thing he got from China is $1.5 billion investment into his son's equity firm with no equity experience. The guy did nothing.
Can I just offer one observation about that? So one thing he did do in China is he negotiated a deal where the Chinese would import a certain number of American movies. And one of the reasons that you see Chinese censorship in Hollywood is because the studios are so eager to get into China, partially, not entirely, but partially because of the deal that Biden actually cut. So you can thank Biden for CCP censorship control over the movies that we watch. Just an FYI, I want to give him some credit.
So that was his big thing to get censorship. Yeah. So I just didn't see it. Look, if you're voting for Bernie,
I agree with you. I mean, Biden's a mess, right? I mean,
he's a mess,
total mess. There's a great book called "The Payoff: Why Wall Street Always Wins" by a guy named Jeff Connaughton, who is a former Biden staffer. The problem with Biden is that he's lazy and he's a micromanager, right? So you can be one or the other. Like if you're really lazy but you just let other people do the work, you can be fine. And if you're a micromanager but you work really hard, you can kind of get through. But he's lazy, but he doesn't let other people do the work. So he's just like a mess because he can't actually coherently come up with answers to anything. He doesn't do opposition research on himself. He doesn't know what the issues are. Like, he's a disaster. And it really is embarrassing to me as a Democrat. Not that he's in the race, because he's over, but more that he was VP for 8 years and that Democrats like him. He's a bad person. He's a genuinely bad person. He's constantly lying about obvious things. Like he just lied. He was like, the other day, he was just like, yes, I got arrested protesting apartheid in South Africa, which is just not true. I mean, it just isn't true. Like a United States congressman or senator getting arrested in South Africa would have been huge news. He just didn't. He talked about how he protested in the civil rights movement. It's just not true. And like he said he didn't do it in earlier affairs. He just lies all the time about really obvious, checkable things. He's a bad person, like a genuinely bad person. And I think what we're seeing right now is the Democratic Party is splitting into two, kind of like the Republican Party, where half the Democrats are just absolutely, like, they're waking up and seeing how horrifying the party establishment is, and they don't like it. And it's because of people like Joe Biden.
Oh my God, you're so right, Matt. You are so right. You know, I've told this story all week, and it's kind of like it's the Trump and the Bernie campaigns. Let me tell you the number one similarity in it, and you just nailed it. When I was for Trump in 2015, before he came down the escalator, and I was there when he did, all right? I didn't care if we burned the Republican National Committee party to the ground. I wanted to torch it. I didn't care if Trump won or lost. We were willing to burn the thing down and start over because we hated it, right? You got this, and that is dangerous for a candidate's supporters. That makes the candidate dangerous because they don't care. When somebody was talking yesterday about it's going to hurt the down ballot tickets, they don't get it. The Bernie people don't care. I heard the same thing in 2016. Oh, if you elect Trump, you're going to get a Democratic House. You're going to get a Democratic Senate. Our view was like, who the hell cares? It can't get worse. They don't do anything anyway. We have a one-party system with two names to it. That's why Trump won. And that's what you just said about the DNC. And that's why I think Bernie's going to win South Carolina. Everybody said he did horrible last night. How did they do horrible?
Yeah, I don't know. But can I give you some unsolicited political advice about about Trump? So, and it's about this coronavirus thing. This is like, so I wrote a piece in Wired about this. This is going to scramble our politics in very weird ways. And I just really hope that, like, you got the Trump administration is kind of split between, you know, the trade people, basically your people that are like this whole model of offshoring to China is bad. And then like the Wall Street people, like the Mnuchins and those guys who are like still sort of swampy, and like Larry Kudlow. the Wall Street people are preventing a coherent response to the coronavirus. And if you guys, and that's just a crisis, because if Trump doesn't come up with a coherent response, I mean, I want Trump to succeed on this because I don't want to die. Maybe that's self-interested, but this is really scary stuff, and he needs to stop being like attacking the Democrats and not funding this. Actually, I don't care if he attacks the Democrats. I don't really care. But if he needs to actually start funding the CDC, he needs to just really start taking this seriously, because it's like, this is some scary stuff, and a lot of people start dying. And if you see what happened in Puerto Rico happen across the country, just purely politically, he's going to get blown out, and there's going to be Medicare for all. There's going to be all the things, things that I want, but there's going to be mass suffering before we get there. And I would prefer to avoid all of that suffering. So if, to the extent that you guys can put pressure on Trump to wake up and take this really seriously, instead of the pitiful penny ante nonsense that he's playing, that would be a really good thing for the country. So that's just my I'm going to kick the Larry Kudlow's out and let him do cocaine somewhere else.
Matt,
yeah.
I don't know if he does cocaine. I'm not a fan of
well,
his.
He used to in the 80s. I mean, when he was at Bear Stearns, he was sort of an ornamental.
Well, didn't they all do that, Bear Stearns?
Well, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't pick on him.
I mean, they all did it. But look, Matt, you are so right, because anybody that's tuning into me now that heard me on Monday, I was very critical of the president's handling of the coronavirus and his advisors in there, and I think it's underfunded. And I think what they should have done was gone to Nancy Pelosi and said, put a bill on the table, I'm going to sign it, and then add $1 billion to it. So if she said 15, I'd added $1 billion, I'd have done 16, and done whatever you can do, instead of fighting over whether it's $3 billion or $15 billion. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Coupled with the fact that I want to be sure that everything we can possibly do is done. And you're right. If he fails, and there is a pandemic in the United States, Bernie Sanders is going to be president, and you are going to get Medicare for all. So you're 100% correct there. The other thing you nailed is the battle on coronavirus. Once again, who is in control of this? Is it Trump? Is it the CDC? No. Who's controlling it? Goldman Sachs, Wall Street, Lower Manhattan, the big finance banks, the hedge funds. They're controlling a response to a pandemic. I mean, how do we keep ending up, Matt, in the same place? At the end of the day, you go back, and even with Trump, Wall Street is running the government. How do we get back here again?
Well, I mean,
am I right?
I think that it's split. I mean, I think there are people in the Trump administration that are trying to address the supply chain problems, like Peter Navarro. And I think I think Trump himself has some instincts here. I think the problem here is that Trump has he has the instinct, he wants the stock market to stay up, and he wants to deal with supply chains in China. And those two things are contradictory, because the stock market, his view is, and I think this is probably what Larry Kudlow is telling him, don't do anything about coronavirus, you'll scare the stock market. And it's like the CDC people are probably telling him, or like Peter Navarro are probably telling him, the stock market is already going to crash. We got to prepare, and that means aggressive intervention now. And Trump is angry at the people that are seeing, Trump wants the stock market to stay up. And that's a really stupid instinct, because the stock market's going to crash. It had already started going down earlier this week. Because of our supply chain dependencies, it's over. What Trump can do, and he can win with this,
yeah.
Right? I don't want him to win, but I want to stay alive. Again,
right.
That's my self-interest here. A pandemic is coming here. That's obvious. The CDC said it. You can't stop the flu, right? It's just going to come here. The question is, and it's not his fault. It's not Trump's fault, right? The diseases are a thing, right? And so the question is, what can he do? And he can really start preparing and mitigating. And you said 15, but it could be much, much higher than that. And it's about dealing with, a whole bunch of things, like giving a bunch of money to states and municipalities who have to protect their populations,
right,
and can't right now. It's about dealing with the huge amounts of medical debt that are going to be incurred because people are going to need to get tested, or they're going to need to actually have intensive care. It's about making sure that small businesses get financing so that when they have to shut down for a little bit, that they don't have liquidity crises. But it's about setting up vote by mail systems so that we don't have to necessarily have people going to polling stations and transmitting the disease to one another. It's like there's a whole bunch of different factors here that, it's not impossible. You can just start thinking about it, right? It's about rationing of key inputs that are no longer coming in from China. Like, these are the kinds of things that you can do if you sort of put some thought into it. But the problem is that, like, it's not just Trump. Like, Trump is the president. The buck stops with him. So, like, he should do this. And he has some people who can do it. But the other thing is the national security community, like, and I put that in sarcastic air quotes, they're spending their time talking about how Russian bots are saying mean things are saying, like, nice things about Bernie or Trump or whatever, instead of actually focusing on real national security, which is this crisis and the supply chains that are all going to going to suffer and be eroded. And that's, I think, like, part of what's happened is we have a bureaucracy that's been set up for the last 25 or 30 years that cannot govern. And it's not just that, like, Wall Street is has bad instincts, because it's true that they do. It's also that, like, you can't set up a functional government in 3 days, right? We have a government where our bureaucrats are focused on the wrong things. Mm-hmm. We can turn that around really quickly, but we need leadership to do that, and that's what I'm not seeing from Trump right now.
Or
the Democrats. I mean, I want the Democrats to push too. I've been pushing them, but they do what they do.
Well, but at least the Democrats have had a response here. I think it was the appropriations chair, Nina, whatever her name is, had a response and threw out the number of $15 billion. But I agree with you 100%. And the fact, I tell you what, I was appalled. I was appalled that Larry Kudlow came on and addressed our response to the coronavirus. Like, what the hell do I care what Larry Kudlow from Goldman Sachs has to say about the coronavirus? He's not even equipped to do that. And I don't know what he did at Bear Stearns, but I want the head of the CDC coming on. I want the head of HHS. I want Dr. Carson, even from housing. I don't want Larry Kudlow getting on TV and telling me, hey, you have nothing to be concerned about, because I know he's there to protect his buddies in Wall Street. That's why he's there. That he's there at the behest of Goldman Sachs. They all are. So the optics of this guy coming out, I thought, was dreadful. And so, again, the buck stops with the president. I blame him for doing that. I want to hear from the president. Look, if Ivanka came out and made a statement, I'd feel better than Larry Kudlow. So, Dr.
Larry
Carson.
Kudlow is also, he's coming out and he's giving investment advice. He's not
exactly
saying, here's what we need to do. He's saying buy the dips. Like, that's look, the thing about this that's so frustrating and scary is that, like, I've talked to a lot of people over the last few days where I've said, you guys know a pandemic is coming here. You guys know that you should have like 2 to 3 weeks of food in your house so that you can stay home if necessary. And I'm talking about people like news organizations, people who should know. And they look at me and they have this frozen look in their eye and they're completely panicked because they've never heard it before. Because most Americans do not understand the gravity of the situation and what is coming, because no one is telling them, right? And Trump needs to tell them. Our political leaders need to tell them. And one of the reasons the Democrats have started to say some things here or there, but like one of the reasons the Democrats are not actually getting up and saying, like, talking to the public aggressively about this, is because when you say we are going to have a pandemic, this is a crisis, get ready, and here's how you can prepare your friends and family, here are the things you need to do, a lot of people will look at you like you're crazy because nobody's told them that this is happening. And and that's the crazy thing right now is that it's like you're kind of a Cassandra, right? If you actually say, guys, get ready, right? This is not the end of the world, but it's scary, right? It's a scary thing. But like, if you say that, and like politicians don't like to get ahead of the voters. Oftentimes, the bad politicians don't like to get ahead of the voters. There's sort of an art to getting ahead of the voters, but not too much. But that's where we are right now, and I really it's a scary thing because they could make. I'm a big China hawk, but China might look relatively good in this situation vis-a-vis us. I mean, they did some really bad things that they can never recover from, but like, I don't know. I'm really worried about this. I'm not, sorry, we got off topic with the debate, but like, you know, even the debate, like the thing is, for the first, I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour of the debate, a whole bunch of us on Twitter were like, what the hell, guys? Where's the coronavirus? Like, a deadly pandemic is coming our way. The stock market is crashing. Our supply chains are disappearing. Why aren't you asking any questions about this? Right? Like, this is crazy. And then, so it was all just like the same questions over and over and over at every single debate, even when there's like basically an asteroid heading for us. Like, that's crazy. It's just nuts. Anyway, that's so there we go. There's the I guess the Mecha Godzilla truth. I don't know.
Great analysis by Matt Stoller of Big. Matt, if people want to subscribe to Big, because it's a great newsletter, how do they do it?
Okay, so go to mattstoller.com, mattstoller.com, and there's a link on there. You can subscribe.
All right, go to mattstoller.com. Matt, always fabulous to have you on. I'm out of time, but let me just ask you this. So who's going to win? Got to make a prediction. We'll both make one. Who's going to win South Carolina on Saturday night?
I think Biden.
I think Bernie Sanders.
I hope Bernie, but I think Biden.
I think Bernie Sanders. On Monday, one of us is on Saturday night at 10 o'clock. One of us is going to be right. Matt, it's going to be me. John Fredericks Radio Network, your Godzilla of the Truth in America. Sign up for Matt Stoller's newsletter. Big. Matt, wrong about South Carolina, but he's right about everything else. I got to wrap.